Good afternoon, students. Let's recall in the last lesson, a spring song, we had seen how the group of 10 children, one by one, had played their games. Hope all of you have understood that lesson very well. Now, before starting the next lesson, I would like to ask you all, students, how many of you all have heard about the stories of Arabian Nights? You all must heard about the stories of Aladdin. So many of the characters of Arabian Nights are in the tales of Aladdin. So our today's lesson is also based on one of the stories of the Arabian Nights, the story of Sinbad the Sailor. Students, I am narrating the story now. Please listen it carefully, everyone. The story of Sinbad and his 7 fantastic voyages appears in the huge collection of stories. Voyages means journeys traveled by a ship. That is, the book of 1001 Night or the Arabian Nights. The story tells us that Sinbad was a famous sailor who lived in Baghdad. He was honest, generous, and brave. Generous means very kind. He had many adventures on each of his voyages. He never lost heart and hope in dangerous situations. He overcame means came out of great dangers and returned home safely from each of his voyages. So, here's the story of his first voyage. The first voyage. Sinbad set sail with a company of sailors. They halted at various ports. Halted means they stopped at various ports. One day, when their ship was sailing smoothly across the sea, they spotted a small island. As they had not seen the land for many days, they felt both surprised and happy seeing the island. The people strolled around. Strolled means they walked here and there without hurrying and sang and danced on the island. Some began to wash clothes, while some lit the fires to cook meals. The land suddenly began to shake and move. The island was actually at the back of a huge sea monster. The sea monster was very huge. Sea monster means a large sea animal or an aggressive creature living in or under the sea that attacks the ships. For example, a blue whale. Most of its body was under the water. When it felt the hot fire on its back, it plunged deep into the sea. What is the meaning of plunge, students? It jumped or dived quickly into the sea. Afraidly, some of them managed to climb on the ship, but many sank into the sea with the monster. Sinbad here alone did not drown in sea. Or was he able to reach the ship as he was sailing far away? He was tossed here and there with the waves. Toss means he was thrown here and there with the waves. He holded the piece of wood, somehow managed himself not to be drowned. He spent the night alone at sea. Next morning, Sinbad was happy to see that he had floated near an island. Luckily, that time, the king of that island sent his horses with their caretakers. They saw Sinbad and gave him food and drink and then took him to the king. The king was impressed with Sinbad and asked Sinbad to stay with him and work as an officer at the port. At the port, Sinbad oftenly inquired about any ships coming from going to Baghdad, but no such ships ever came to that port. Suddenly, one day, a ship arrived at the island with a lot of merchandise. Merchandise means goods or things for sale. When the ship was being unloaded, Sinbad was surprised because he saw his own name marked on some of the boxes on the ship that he arrived at the island. The captain of the ship was surprised to see Sinbad alive. He was overjoyed. Overjoyed means he was very happy because he saw Sinbad drowning in the sea. The captain gave back all his merchandise. Merchandise means goods. From that goods, Sinbad gave the king the most valuable items that he got back. Valuable means very costly items. Being pleased with Sinbad, the king also gave Sinbad many valuable gifts when Sinbad left the island with the merchant ship. So I hope students all have understood this story which I had narrated you. Now, open your textbook, all of you students, page number 6. Be ready with your pencil for marking the hard words, and I will say you all the meanings of the hard words. Okay, students? So let's start with the reading part now from your textbook. Lesson number 5, the story of Sinbad the Sailor. The story of Sinbad and his 7 fantastic voyages appears in the huge collection of stories. Underline voyages, meaning journeys traveled by a ship. The book of 1001 Nights or the Arabian Nights. The story tells us that Sinbad was a famous sailor who had many adventures on each of his voyages. He never lost heart and hope in dangerous situations. He overcame means came out of great dangers and returned home safely from each of his voyages. Here's the story of his first voyage. The first voyage. Sinbad set sail with a company of merchants on a big ship. From time to time, they stopped at various ports. There they sold their merchandise. Merchandise means goods for sale, and bought new things to trade. Trade means to sell. Underline merchandise, underline trade. One day, when their ship was sailing smoothly across the sea, they spotted a small island at a distance. They had not seen land for many days and felt both surprised and happy to see the island. They sailed close to the island. The captain of the ship allowed them to go there for a picnic. Everyone was excited. Excited means very happy. On the island, they strolled around. Stroll means they walked here and there without hurrying, sang and danced. Some people began to wash clothes. Some lit fires to cook milk. Soon a breeze sprang up. Sprang means began to blow suddenly. Underline the word sprang. The fires began to blaze. Blaze, please underline blaze. The meaning of blaze is burn strongly. Fire began to burn strongly. Suddenly, the land began to shake and move. With a shock, the picnic party realized that the island was not an island at all. They were on the back of a huge sea monster and it had started moving. Underline the word sea monster. The meaning of sea monster, as I told you all earlier, it means a large sea animal or an aggressive creature living in or under the sea that attacks the ships. Example, blue whale. And it had started moving. People began to scream. Scream means they began to shout. Underline word scream. They left their pots and pans, their clothes, both washed and unwashed, and rushed back to the ship. The captain ordered his men to set sail immediately in order to move away from the monster. The sea monster plunged deep into the sea. Underline the word plunged. Plunged means it jumped or dived quickly deep into the sea. Many of the people managed to climb aboard the ship. Underline the word aboard. Aboard means on the ship or to catch the ship. But many sank into the sea with the so-called island. Sinbad alone did not drown in the sea. But he could not reach the ship. He saw it sailing far, far away. He was now at the mercy of the waves. Mercy means pity of the waves, being tossed here and there, being thrown away here and there. He clung to a piece of wood. Clung means he held on to a piece of wood and somehow managed to keep afloat. Underline the word tossed. Underline the word clung and afloat. Underline the word afloat. Afloat means to keep floating on the water. He spent the night alone at sea. When the next day dawned, underline the word dawn. Dawn means begin or started. Sinbad was happy to see that he had floated near an island, a real big island. He could see hills and woods and trees at a distance. Though he was extremely tired, he swam to the shore with all the strength that he could muster. Underline the word strength. Underline the word muster. Muster means that he could use at that time. Exhausted and hungry, he lay on the sand for some time. Then again, he made an effort and began to walk inland towards the shady fruit trees. Inland, underline, the meaning of inland is an area of land which is away from the seashore that he could see at a distance. Luckily, this was the time when the king of that island sent his horses to the seashore with the grooms. Underline the word grooms. The meaning of grooms is those who take care of the horses. That means caretaker of the horses. The grooms saw Sinbad and gave him food and drink. Then they took him to the king. The king was impressed by the way Sinbad told him about what had happened. He asked Sinbad to stay with him and work as an officer of the king at that port. Sinbad stayed there for a few days, learning a lot from the king and the people on the island, and in turn telling them about the other cities and ports that he had visited. At the port, Sinbad often made enquiries about any ships coming from or going to Baghdad, but no such ship ever came to that port. Then, one day, a ship arrived at the island with a lot of merchandise. Merchandise means goods or things for sale. Sinbad was at the quay when the cargo, what is the meaning of quay? Quay means a platform in a port or a harbor where boats come to load or unload their luggage. I repeat again, a platform in a port or harbor where boats come to load or unload their luggage. When the cargo, underline the word cargo, meaning of cargo means load of goods or things carried in a ship or an aeroplane. From that ship was being unloaded. He was surprised to see that his own name was marked on some of the boxes. Then he went to see the captain of the ship. At first, the captain could not believe that it was the same Sinbad that they had seen drowning in the sea. Underline the word drowning. But when Sinbad spoke to him face to face, he recognized him. He was overjoyed. Underline the word overjoyed. Overjoyed means he was very happy to see Sinbad alive. He gave him back all his merchandise. Merchandise means all his goods. From the goods that he thus got back, Sinbad presented the most valuable items to the king of the island. Valuable means very costly items, saying, "Please accept this, your majesty. You have been very kind and very generous to me." Underline the word generous. The king was pleased. He too gave Sinbad many valuable gifts. Underline the word valuable. When Sinbad left the island with the merchant ship. If you want to know what happened to Sinbad afterwards, you have to read the rest of the story of his fantastic voyages. So I hope students all have understood this lesson very well. Thank you, students. Stay home, stay safe.